Okay, so today we're going to be looking at flipping a sample and trying to change it up in order to put your own mark on it. And so to start things off, I'd like to thank Leo Neidiger, one of our subscribers, for making this dope animation of this logo. You can check out a link of his in the description. So let's check out the sample. So first thing to do is you want to split the sample up into different sections. And so that can be based on the chord, based on the beat, and then you can organize it around that, and usually that works pretty well. If you hear a sample, sometimes you'll have an idea of what you want it to sound like before you even finish the sample. One thing I notice is that the start of the sample sounds like the end of a bar to me, and so I'm just going to experiment with that. And also this section sounds like the ending of the sample. And so these are just personal. So what I'm going to do now is actually find the start. Where do I want to start the sample? And so I feel like that fits, so I'm going to put that to the start and then put the part that I feel like fits at the end of the bar at the end. And an important thing with samples, especially with chords, is for resolution. So you want it to come back together at the end of your sample in order for it to loop effectively. And so in my case, I feel like those other sections sound like endings just because of how they can smoothly transition to the first chord that I used. And so it's important also to look around your sample and try and find a section that you want specifically, because a lot of chords in the context of a sample can have underlying tones that may not necessarily fit, even though the top line of the chord sounds the same as one previously. And I want to show you how I broke that down into different sections, and this is what it sounds like broken down in the context of the original sample. So now I made a few chops and edits just to fit a groove of what I would like, and this is what it sounds like. So what do you expect? I use RC20, Vintage Verb, Multiband Dynamics, EQ, stereo imaging. So another thing to talk about is just a set of plugins that are your go-to. And these are my go-to for now. I mean, even 3 months ago, it was completely different. And I'm sure 3 months from now, it'll be completely different as well. And so this is what it sounds like altogether. So the drums. The drums are obviously a very important part of this. Sample flipping, I feel, is something that everyone can get accustomed to, especially if you know a little bit of music theory. You can really make a sample sound good. And so when you want to stand out, you want to do that in percussion, bass, anything else, a unique element, and I tend to do that with my drums. And so I wanted to go 4 in the floor here, but I didn't want to make it very generic, and so let's just listen to what we have. So I started this one with a percussion loop. It's just a generic shaker. And I pitched it down a bit, accentuated the transients. And then I just chopped it up a bit based on the beat. Here are a few other elements that I used in order to create some percussion. And an important part of this is that I use a particular drum loop here in order to create some percussion more in the low end. So normally, and the idea is you EQ out the low end to make room for the kick and the bass, but I feel like this percussion adds a lot of groove. So here's what it sounds like originally. And then I isolated the section I wanted. And so with some stereo imaging and EQing, this is what it sounds like. And so here I used an EQ. I cut out most of the sub frequency low end, but kept kind of that mid-low frequency range in order for it to match up with the top end of the kick. I also added stereo imaging to give it its own space. So this is what our percussion sounds like altogether. So here's my kick. And here's the kick with all the other percussion. Some accents I have on the kick are pushed forward from the beat. And for the claps, all I did was take a bit of the mids out and accentuate the highs. And I made them come early. And so here's what the drums sound like altogether. And so let's listen to what our bass sounds like. So in this particular case, I didn't use the bass to follow the notes of the chord, but what I rather did is hum a melody into my voice notes as if I was singing a top line, but use that as a bass melody, and that worked out pretty good in this case. And so I also have a top end bass where I used an auto filter. And this is what it sounds like altogether. Here I also added some vocal samples from Arcade. And so for the break, I wanted to keep a kick going, but without the clap. I find that the kick rhythm with bass and some melodics always really helps. I used a trick that I used in the last YouTube video, which was using reverb in order to create a space in the room, especially for breaks. And this is what it sounds like. Gives this kind of lounge club type of feel. And so that's pretty much it. I hope you guys learned something today. I hope you guys feel inspired to make some more music today. And I'll catch you next time.